Hello, everybody. Are we live? I think so.
Yeah.
We're just checking. We seem to be live. Um, we'd just like to say this is the weirdest thing that I've ever done in my life. We are live on the internet, which is all a bit mad and all a bit crazy, but thank you for tuning in. And the good people at Grenson said to me, what you should do is go online and answer lots of questions from people because everybody's bored, everybody's fed up, and just come on and just answer a few things here and there. So here we are. The setup here really simple. I'm in my house. I've been in here for a very long time, it seems, with my family. I love them very much, but it has been 6 weeks. So anyway, enough said. I have a little friend today. My partner in crime over here is Eliza Little. There she is, with a drink, obviously. And she's going to help me field some of the questions because I was thinking to myself, how do I answer questions and read the questions at the same time? Anyway, she's the answer, so that's what we're going to do. So I thought before I start answering the questions, I might just give you a bit of an update of what it's been happening at Grenson and what it's like for a business like us. And it's really, really weird, and it's quite emotional and very strange. It's never happened before, ever, obviously. We always say that, if something catastrophic happens, like the economy falls into depression, all that kind of stuff, you kind of think that, you might have a terrible year and be 10% down or something. And then we're in a situation where we sell nothing and you think, wow, oh my God, how does this work? So what happened was, very quickly, before I start doing the questions, as soon as the lockdown happened, everything stopped, stone dead. And we sat down and we thought, it was like, somebody asked me the other day, and it was like somebody said, so at this point, all you know is that there are no sales, nobody's buying shoes, nothing is happening, and you say to yourself, so we've got no information here. There was, at this point, no government help, obviously, because it was too early and nobody knew what to do. Grenson. Hello, everybody. Are we live? I think so.
Yeah.
We're just checking. We seem to be live. We'd just like to say this is the weirdest thing that I've ever done in my life. We are live on the internet, which is all a bit mad and all a bit crazy, but thank you for tuning in. And the good people at Grenson said to me, what you should do is go online and answer lots of questions from people because everybody's bored, everybody's fed up, and just come on and just answer a few things here and there. So here we are. The setup here really simple. I'm in my house. I've been in here for a very long time, it seems, with my family. I love them very much, but it has been 6 weeks. So anyway, enough said. I have a little friend today. My partner in crime over here is Eliza Little. There she is, with a drink, obviously. And she's going to help me field some of the questions because I was thinking to myself, how do I answer questions and read the questions at the same time? Anyway, she's the answer, so that's what we're going to do. So I thought before I start answering the questions, I might just give you a bit of an update of what it's been happening at Grenson and what it's like for a business like us. And it's really, really weird, and it's quite emotional and very strange. It's never happened before, ever, obviously. We always say that, if something catastrophic happens, like the economy falls into, depression, all that kind of stuff, you kind of think that, you might have a terrible year and be 10% down or something. And then we're in a situation where we sell nothing and you think, wow, oh my God, how does this work? So what happened was, very quickly, before I start doing the questions, as soon as the lockdown happened, everything stopped, stone dead. And we sat down and we thought, it was like, somebody asked me the other day, and it was like somebody said, so at this point, all you know is that there are no sales, nobody's buying shoes, nothing is happening. And you say to yourself, so we've got no information here. There was, at this point, no government help, obviously, because it was too early and nobody knew what to do. And we had no idea how long it would last, if it would be a year or whatever. So it's a little bit like somebody says to you, I'm going to hit you with something in a minute. Close your eyes, you're going to be hit with something in a minute, and you've no idea whether it's a feather or a freight train. You've just no idea. Close your eyes and wait for it, and something's going to hit you. And it was like terrifying. The first week was absolutely terrifying. Just thought, well, what happens if we don't have any sales for 6 months? Because the thing that carries on is the costs. The sales, pay for the costs. But what if it's 6 months? Anyway, things have moved on a lot since then. The government support and everything, and we've utilised that where we can, and we made a plan. We thought very early on we wanted to try and make sure that anybody who worked for Granson was not actually impacted by it at all. What that would be like, the perfect scenario would be that we come out of this the other end and nobody who works for us has been impacted. So your salary hasn't been impacted, you haven't lost a bonus, you haven't lost whatever. So that's kind of a kind of target. And at this point, we're at the stage where we've got a lot more information. We've talked to all the people we sell to. So we sell 3 different ways. We sell our shoes via our own website. We sell our shoes via wholesale to people like Selfridges or whoever, and we sell in our own stores. So we've got 5 stores in London. So the stores dead, nothing. Wholesale, pretty much nothing. Haven't had a wholesale. We haven't invoiced a wholesale customer for 5-6 weeks. And the web is still working to a certain extent. So we've got 3 people in the warehouse. They come in 3 days a week, and they just manage those orders. So we've managed to keep everything going and keep them safe. And all of them, everybody who's working, has been asked if they want to work or not. If they don't want to work, they don't have to. It's not an issue. They chose to work. It's great. And they're our kind of personal heroes. So we're really, really indebted to them, which is great. Anyway, so that's us really. We're now in a position where we've got a bit of light now. We kind of understand where we think. We've talked to all of our wholesale customers, like all the department stores and the independent retailers, who are amazing and have been amazing. It's incredible how you learn about self. So we've got no information here. There was, at this point, no government help, obviously, because it was too early and nobody knew what to do. And we had no idea how long it would last, if it would be a year or whatever. So it's a little bit like somebody says to you, I'm going to hit you with something in a minute. Close your eyes, you're going to be hit with something in a minute, and you've no idea whether it's a feather or a freight train. You've just no idea. Close your eyes and wait for it, and something's going to hit you. And it was like terrifying. The first week was absolutely terrifying. Just thought, well, what happens if we don't have any sales for 6 months? Because the thing that carries on is the costs. The sales, pay for the costs. But what if it's 6 months? Anyway, things have moved on a lot since then. The government support and everything, and we've utilised that where we can, and we made a plan. We thought very early on we wanted to try and make sure that anybody who worked for Granson was not actually impacted by it at all. What that would be like, the perfect scenario would be that we come out of this the other end and nobody who works for us has been impacted. So your salary hasn't been impacted, you haven't lost a bonus, you haven't lost whatever. So that's kind of a kind of target. And at this point, we're at the stage where we've got a lot more information. We've talked to all the people we sell to. So we sell 3 different ways. We sell our shoes via our own website. We sell our shoes via wholesale to people like Selfridges or whoever. And we sell in our own stores. So we've got 5 stores in London. So the store's dead, nothing. Wholesale, pretty much nothing. Haven't had a wholesale. We haven't invoiced a wholesale customer for 5-6 weeks. The web is still working to a certain extent. So we've got 3 people in the warehouse. They come in 3 days a week, and they just manage those orders. So we've managed to keep everything going and keep them safe. And all of them, everybody who's working, has been asked if they want to work or not. If they don't want to work, they don't have to. It's not an issue. They chose to work. It's great. And they're our kind of personal heroes. So we're really, really indebted to them, which is great. Anyway, so that's us really. We're now in a position where we've got a bit of light now. We kind of understand where we think. We've talked to all of our wholesale customers, like all the department stores and the independent retailers, who are amazing and have been amazing. It's incredible how you learn about what people are like. As Warren Buffett once said, when the tide goes out, you find out who was swimming naked. And what happens is, in a situation like this, you really find out what people are like. And nearly all of the people we deal with, to be honest, have been incredible. And through very tough times, I mean, the independent retailers, it's so hard for them. But they've done a great job so far, and they've been really nice and really pleasant. So we love it. Anyway, enough of that. Let's do a few questions. So Eliza, my fantastic assistant over here, what have you asked them to ask? Oh yeah, can you ask us some questions? As many as you like. We already have some here that people have sent in already, and anything new is coming up. Eliza's going to put it in front of me, and we're going to work it all out, and we're going to do it that way. I know it's a bit chaotic, but by the way, before I start, do you like the backdrop? So obviously the key thing about doing things like this is you've got to prepare your backdrop, okay? So I was hoping to have the complete works of Dostoevsky up there, so you'd be impressed, but they didn't arrive, thanks to Amazon, in time, so I put a few old albums up there. Apologies for that, but here we go. So let's start a few questions. So number 1 I have here is Maggie from Folk. Now, if you don't know Folk is the most gorgeous men's and women's wear, the most gorgeous brand. Check them out online. They're just amazing. I've got lots of their stuff. Maggie has said, how do you manage to stay focused in day-to-day business while maintaining your level of creative input? Okay, so that's a question about, I'm creative director of Grenson, and it's the question about how do you do the business side and the creative side at the same time, I guess. First of all, she said, how do you stay focused? And I think most people at Grenson would say, well, he doesn't stay focused in anything. He's all over the place. And so focus is not a great attribute of mine, that's for certain. But I think for me personally, I absolutely love where creativity and business come together. And that's why I love our business. So I could never work in the city because I don't think it's just numbers and it's about pushing money around in different places. I love the creativity of creating a product but I also loved the business side of it. So I could never be an artist and put my work out there and people say I either like it or I don't like it, whatever. I love the idea of creating a product that people want to actually buy and wear. And so I think the other point as well is that to stay focused in both sides is about having a really good team. And, you know, if that sounds a bit trite, I should be saying, oh, no, I do it all myself. I literally don't do it all myself at all. The team at Granson are amazing. And I learnt very early on that a successful business is all about having great people. And again, that sounds a bit trite, but it's absolutely true. So on the creative side, we have designers who are fantastic, and they do all the work. I do very little work on that side at all. We sit down, we brief stuff. I am the kind of heart and soul of the brand in the sense that I very much, nothing will go through if I'm not happy with it and I don't feel it's Granson and what have you. And I brief the stuff in. But the girls who do work in the design department are amazing. And they create an enormous amount of really cool stuff, as hopefully you know. And then on the business side as well, everybody who works around us, we've got such an amazing team, and they're incredible. So the answer, Maggie, to your question is, I don't really stay that focused. They do the focusing, and I kind of waft about a bit and get involved and you know, kind of mess things up occasionally. But that's a very good question. Thank you very much for that one. Right, now, question number 2. Here we go. That is... okay. So we have a question from Style Mum, who's a really cool blog, lovely blog, friend of the brand, really love what she does. She said, who is Nanette? She is an icon. Well, could be 2 parts to that. Nanette is not a person. Funny enough, with all of our shoes, we decided very early on to give them names, people's names, Christian names, because we thought they're like little personalities, and we love the idea that they've got these, you know, kind of their own personality. And some of them, you'll notice, maybe have names that are quite appropriate for the type of shoe they are. Anyway, Nanette was a shoe. For those who don't know, Nanette's been a big deal for us as a brand over the last couple of years. And there was I'll tell you the story. I'll tell you a quick story about Nanette. So often people say, how do trends come about? Okay, so here's a story. Joe and I, who works very closely with me, we were in New York, and we were meeting with a guy called Ronnie Fig. And Ronnie Fig has a shop and a brand called Kith. Now, Kith is like the cutting edge of fashion, streetwear fashion, probably in the world, certainly in America, certainly in New York. And Ronnie is absolutely working with all the coolest people and he knows everything. We had a coffee with him because we did a collaboration with him a few years before. And we said, at the time, sneakers were absolutely huge. And we were saying, this is an issue for us. We didn't have sneakers. And we were a bit worried about it. And we said to him, he said, how's business? And we said, well, it's okay, but, you know, sneakers are like massive and we're a good year, you know, we're making brogues and what have you. And he said, well, of course, you're going to be fine because the next big trend is hiking boots. And we went, oh, and this is, I think this is 2016. So he goes, hiking boot. And we said, hiking boots? What do you mean hiking boots? He said, well, no, old-fashioned hiking boots are really cool. Like if you look on eBay, or if you Google, like, you know, kind of traditional, these old kind of beautiful Swiss mountain boots with lots of eyelets and everything. And we were like, wow, God. Anyway, we left. I got straight on the phone to the girls in the design team and said, hiking boots. We need to do some hiking boots. Here's a bunch of references. Here's some ideas when I get back. Anyway, we made the hiking boot. We made Nanette, and we made, I think, 3 other hiking boots at the time. We launched them the next season, and disaster, absolutely rubbish. So didn't sell. We sat around the table, said, shall we keep it in the collection? Shall we move it on? Da, da, da. And we said, well, let's keep it going. You know, if it's a trend, it's a trend. And of course, what happens with trends like that is they start really small, and the people who are buying them are at the very front end of the trend, and the small numbers, but then it grows and grows. And anyway, to cut a very long story long, because I've already banged on about this for half an hour, it's Nanette became huge. And the other three that we did still didn't work, but there was something about Nanette that worked and became huge. Nanette the name was picked out of the air. It's not Nanette Newman. It's not anything like that. It's just a name that we picked out of the air, and it's a fantastic boot. And by the way, I was going to ask as a little question to see if anybody can guess this one. What's the best-selling shoe of all time from Grenson, shoe or boot? And it's either, I'll give you a clue, it's either Stanley, Archie, Fred or Nanette. Anyway, we'll come back to that later. But right, next question. Here we go.
Do you want to choose any of these?
Huh?
Do you want to choose any of them?
Yeah, actually, I've got one here. What is... So, a good friend of ours is Jordan Bunker, who's got an amazing blog. And if you're into menswear, check him out. He's just fantastic, really well informed and well worth following. He's asked a really amazing question, which is about the vegan collection. So last year we launched a vegan collection, and he said the vegan collection that you launched earlier this year was great and a real step, in brackets, awful intended pun. Thank you. Unintended pun, sorry. Sorry, Jordan, unintended pun. In the right direction. However, in the footwear industry, I feel there will always be a consumer demand for leather footwear. How do you see the footwear industry continuing to change in order to contribute to a greener process? Okay, very cool. So there's kind of two parts to that. One is, will there be a future for leather footwear? And the other is, how do we contribute to the green process? So first of all, vegan. We did vegan last year. And by the way, let me just have a quick drink. It's a bit of a Negroni. I'm on holiday. Working from home. Oh, that's better. We launched the vegan collection, and we weren't inundated with people saying we've got to have a vegan collection. Where are the vegan shoes? But we did think that it was more about choice. It was more about saying we'll never drop the leather collection. It's about choice. So if you are vegan and you really want to wear Grenson shoes, we should be able to provide that for you. And so we did. So we launched it. And the other part to it as well was that I felt that times are changing, and we produce leather is absolutely still the best material for making shoes in terms of the way it works and the way you make it, and when you wear it, the comfort, the breathability, the way it wears over time and everything. It's still the very best thing. However, I also think that in years to come, it won't be. There will be other things, and the market is moving on. And as the market starts to, there are more and more vegans who are looking for, and not just vegans, but people who are looking for non-leather products. I just think that it will really move on, and we need to know what's going on. So I thought if we start a vegan collection and put it out there, because of the way the fashion industry works, once you do something, you have to keep doing it. And every season, you have to do something new. You can't stop. So I thought, if we just put it out there, let's do a vegan collection, let's work on it, let's get it together, put it out there, and then it will just force us to start researching and looking for new materials and different materials, and it will put us ahead of lots of other people in terms of looking for what are more interesting modern materials. And it's been amazing because so far we've found all kinds of things from we make a shoe, for example, this season out of it's a suede, and you would have no idea that it's not normal leather suede, but it's made from ocean waste. It's made from literally pulped plastic ocean waste, and it's made into suede, and it's beautiful, and it makes a beautiful pair of shoes. So we've learnt about that, and we've learnt about there are products like there's a company in America I've been working with who recreate leather out of mimicking the DNA of animals, which is amazing. And they say they're not quite ready yet. I say they're not quite ready. They don't know when they'll be ready, but they say that when their product is fully ready to be used, it will be incredible. So they will be able to use it in liquid form, and so they can ship it in liquid form, and then you can recreate it in your own factory and make it, lay it out, and turn it into what is leather product. And also, even they said the ultimate thing, which they think they'll definitely be able to do in the next couple of years, is they can even create it in spray form. So you can imagine if you scuff your shoe, or if you could spray on this leather, and it is literally like leather in spray form. So the vegan thing, Jordan Bunker, that's a really great question. I love it. I don't think leather footwear is going anywhere for the time being. We're not trying to replace it. But we want to move with the market. We want to move with what people want and what people. So we're making sure we've got kind of understand where things are going. We never wanted to be a museum brand at Grenson. We want to be a modern brand that really uses our historical heritage, but in a modern way. So that's what we're doing there. So great question. Next question. Here we go. Some great people. Monsieur Jerome, a great friend of mine from New York. Jonathan Swanston, hello. Just a couple of hellos there. Just a quick Negroni. Yeah. So we've got as grown as interesting. So we've got a Jennifer who said the loungewear market has grown massively since lockdown. Do you think this pandemic will change the way people dress? Very interesting, because the big part of that question for me is a lot of people are saying, do you think the pandemic generally will change the way people change people's behaviour? And a lot of people are saying, it's going to change enormously. Everybody's going to be working from home. They're going to be on Zoom meetings and and they're going to and they're going to wear loungewear, and they're going to whatever. I personally still think that whenever something like this happens, human beings tend to go quite quickly back to what they were doing before. So I think there will be changes. I think there are a lot of people who didn't buy online much before who have now learnt to buy online. There are a lot of people who didn't use kind of FaceTime or Zoom or whatever, who will now use that more. But I think generally it will be a smallish difference. It will be like a 10% difference ultimately, because I think the real thing is that people at the end of all this will actually be desperate to get back to how they were before. I don't know. I think in terms of, let's go back to the question properly, loungewear, as opposed to, I don't know. So for example, people might say, let's say Boris said tomorrow, you can all go out and, do what you want. I can see people saying, I'm going to dress up. I'm so sick of my loungewear. I am so sick of wearing my Birkenstocks and my my velour tracksuit or whatever people wear in these situations. And I'm going to dress up. I'm going to really go for it. I'm going to wear a suit and a beautiful pair of shoes. I'm going to really go for it because I'm out there again now. So I don't know. We'll see. Behaviour will change. That's definite. But I don't think it will change as much as maybe people thought. By the way, on that very question, I saw there was a question here from. It was from, oh God, I can't remember who it was. I'll come back to it. But somebody said, I thought it was really interesting, do you think that flat shoes for women is going to be a thing forever? Do you think, yeah, it's up there. So do you think the trend towards flat shoes is going to be a thing? So I've got this thing about trends and how they work. And I feel... Amy. So this is from Amy. And she said, do you think the flat shoe, the hiker boot, is here to stay? I think the flat shoe is 100% here to stay. And the reason is that I think when you have a trend that is actually practical and easier to wear and all of those things and more usable, it tends to stay around forever. So the sneaker trend was a massive sneaker trend 4 years ago when everything was about sneakers, and it will never go away. Sneaker wearing and wearing them with suits, wearing them with whatever, will never go away because they're lovely to wear. A sneaker is lovely to wear. It's comfortable, it's easy, there's no heel on it, you don't slip out, all that kind of stuff. And I think the same. I think women have kind of been empowered by the idea of the flat shoe. It is like it used to be. You had to feel strong. You had to put a pair of heels on. I think that's kind of moved on, and I think what people realise is it's comfortable, it's more practical, it's lovely to wear, and I don't think it'll ever move on. By the way, I don't think the heel, the high heel, will ever move away for a long time either. But I certainly don't think the flat shoe. I think both will survive together. And right, next question. Let's do. We've got one here from Martin, and Martin's asked, "What's your favourite pair of shoes that you own and why?" By the way, just seen Nick Sullivan come on. Hi, Nick. Great to see you. Can't wait to see you in New York next time we're over there. I hope it's not too distant future, and I hope it's not too bad in New York for you, because I've heard it's pretty awful, but I'm sure you're okay. Martin said, what's your favourite pair of shoes that you own and why? That's quite simple. I have a pair of shoes. When I first started, before Grenson, I started my own collection. Back in 1997, I opened the first shop. And the first ever shoe I briefed in to get a kind of prototype back to have a look at it, I've still got that now. I still wear them. And it's a very simple, many would say boring, I would say gorgeous, but that's, whatever. It's a really simple 5-eyelet Derby shoe. It's in nut brown. It's got a double leather sole. It's on the original, my first ever last was called a TL1 last, which we still use now. And I've still got that pair. And it was such a prototype. It had no logos. I didn't have a logo. We were just kind of trying to make something that worked. And I absolutely love it. So that's the favourite pair that I own. Of my Grenson shoes, I've got so many that I love. I've got a pair of Cordovan shoes, which I love. I've got all kinds of stuff. One of the lovely pairs that I really, really enjoy and wear a lot is that we did a collaboration with Barber, and we did this shoe kind of out of Barber canvas and leather. So the wingtip was leather and the main part of the shoe was canvas. And they've got a commando sole, they're very outdoorsy. And they're great. I really love those. So, yeah, that's one of my favourites. Here we go. And we've got Also see Velcros and sell, but they don't seem to make it. And Grenson Welly boot, please. So Alice Beer, who's a friend of the brand, we love her to death. She's such a cool person, and she's asked a Grenson Welly boot, please. Well, that's interesting because when I first got involved with Grenson, I felt that what Grenson was about was a Goodyear welted shoe, and we shouldn't make a sneaker, and we shouldn't make that we should keep it very tight, not make anything. And I used to joke and say, the day that Grenson makes a welly, we've kind of gone off track. But what happens is over time you start to say, we build up a following, and people trust you to make something different, and say, well, we could do that. Maybe we could do a sneaker. What if Grenson did a sneaker? How would they do it? They could make it out of really beautiful leathers and make it, not a cheap sneaker. And then, of course, the welly thing came. And the reason it keeps coming up is because we always think we'd love to be involved in some way in festivals. And we go, well, there's no point in, doing a brogue or something, a chunky leather-soled brogue for Glastonbury. We kind of need a welly, to do that. So I've looked at it and we're working on it. I don't know if it'll ever happen. The one thing we'll never do is we'll never do something for the sake of selling it. We'll only do it if we think that Grenson can bring something to the party. That's a kind of bit of a stolen that a bit from Braun, from Dieter Rams, who always said, Braun will never ever introduce anything unless it's improved what was there before. So when they made the first shaver, and when they made first calculator, they always said, if we can't design something better that's already in the market, we won't bother. So that was that. Very bit worthy, and forget that. And here we go. Oh my God. So this is from Where's My Money, another really great blog. Where's My Money is a very funny, she's a very funny person, and her blog is really cool and makes me laugh a lot. Anyway, what we've realised through Instagram is that because I'm a Derby County supporter, and you may laugh. Sorry, that's my daughter laughing. And Where's My Money is a Brentford supporter, and she said, seeing as Brentford are your local team, will we see you there at the new stadium soon? Well, that's the weird thing about football. Okay, we talk about brands. Okay, so I support Derby County. They have treated me like absolute whatever for the last 40 years, right? Terrible product, terrible service, absolutely appalling, really expensive, waste of money, yet I can't stop going. I buy the shirt, I do the thing, and I drive to every home game with my son for 2.5 hours there and 2.5 hours back. And at the end of my road is the Brentford football ground. And I could go there, and Brentford are currently above Derby in the league, which is a bit bizarre to me because I'm old school. And I remember that anyway. Sorry, I'm just being wound up by the daughter here saying, get on with it. Sorry about that. Anyway, so the answer is you will definitely see me there, but not as a season ticket holder, but I'll pop in occasionally and enjoy it because I'm sure there'll be plenty of empty seats. Right, where are we going here? Just say hello to Kate Thornton. Very nice to see you. Thank you for coming on. She's a friend of the brand. Wears shoes, looks amazing in them as always. We're going to go with. Could you have a competition when the winner goes? Oh, that's a good one. So we've got somebody called Beaky, who says, could we have a competition where the winner gets a shoe named after them? I think that is a brilliant idea, and we're going to do that. So if anybody from Grenson is watching this, they're probably not, because they're probably all lying on the sofa drinking Aperol Spritz. But if anybody from Grenson is watching this, write that one down, and we're going to do that. Name a shoe after you. By the way, that reminds me of something. I had a question here from somebody called Nick, and he said, "What's the worst shoe you've ever designed?" So, and this ties into the naming thing. So, after a couple of years of doing Grenson shoes, I suddenly thought, well, I think it's about time that we had a shoe called Tim. You know, I mean, why not? Obviously, everybody kind of raised their eyebrows in the meeting and what have you. But anyway, so we did a shoe, and it was a bit experimental. And it was like, at the time, the thing was all about these kind of really unstructured, really soft, unlined shoes, Italian kind of things that you could literally bend in half. And I thought, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to show that you can make a Goodyear welted shoe like that, unstructured, soft, and like a pair of slippers almost. And we called it Tim. Anyway, it was awful. It was absolutely dreadful. And it didn't work. It wasn't right because the sole was too stiff and all this kind of stuff. It looked shocking, and it was called Tim. So that's about the naming thing, going back to naming. Right, next up.
Are you expanding your vegan shoe range?
Are we expanding the vegan shoe range? Yes, we will, definitely. So the way we did it was we thought we'll take some of our best styles and offer them up in vegan versions, and then we'll just like listen to the market and see what happens, see how much people buy them, and listen to people who write to us and what have you. So far, we've got some really good feedback, but it still seems to be that people kind of want the classics. So it's a kind of core range of about 10 styles, but I would love for it to grow, and I think it's a really nice kind of collection to develop. So we'll definitely do that. We'll definitely move it on and build it over time. Next one.
That's really sweet.
Here you go. Can I just do this one here?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just overruling the daughter here. Daniel Classic Stuff has said, any chance that the Velt collection could be produced with a less aggressive sole? So that's really interesting, because that is kind of the traditional part of me and of Grenson coming out, where the Veltshern, for people who don't know, the Veltshern for shoemakers is the ultimate shoe. And it's a shoe that was developed for the Boer War, whenever that was. And it's a beautiful design. And before waterproof fabrics and before Gore-Tex and things like that, they designed the waterproofness of the shoe, if that's a word, into the actual construction. And they made this very, very difficult to make shoe called a Veltshern boot. There are probably, I think, 3 or 4 probably factories who still make a Veltshern. We are one of them. And go and have a look at it online, because it's called Victor. I can't remember what the other one's called. There's a shoe and a boot, and I love it. Very, very classic. But it's always regarded as the whole point of it is that it is very outdoors, waterproof, and therefore it has this big chunky commando sole on it. So I can't see us doing, maybe we could do a version, but I'm not sure I see the point in doing a version of it with a slimmer sole or more dressy or whatever, because I think it is what it is. It's a get outside in the muddy fields, and that's the way it works. So great question. What was the next one?
Alice Beer says that we're going up against Jack Whitehall's Instagram Live.
What's that one?
Does he wear Grenson?
Does who wear Grenson?
Jack Whitehall.
Jack Whitehall. Does Jack Whitehall wear Grenson?
That's a question.
I'm sure he does. Surely everybody wears Grenson, don't they? I mean, surely by now we've been working at this for long enough for everybody. Yeah, I hope he wears it. If not, I met him once actually at a football charity thing, and he said, I asked him, I thought he lived near where I live, and I said, I think you live near where I live, and he said, no, I don't. And so that was the end of that. That was Jack Whitehall. What's the next one?
Dunno.
Yeah. Neil Banks. Neil Banks. Where did the inspiration for the red boxes come from? So, interesting. Red has become a Grenson kind of colour. We use it a lot, but it wasn't always the case. So when I first got to Grenson, we looked over the last 140 years of what they'd used in terms of graphics, colours, logos. And as a brand, they'd moved around all over the place, changed the logo every 5 or 6 years, changed the colours of what they did. Like everything was always changing. So we thought, okay, well, let's put a bit of a line in the sand and let's do our own thing. So we redesigned the logo. We used the rose, which had been used a bit in the past. The rose signifies Northamptonshire is known as the county of the roses, and more importantly even is the fact that the rose is the English rose. So the rose is very significant for a business like us, a brand like us, and that the rose is red, famous red rose, I guess. And so we started out with this new logo with a rose in it, and we started using red, and we still use it. And we don't want to overuse it, because it's like any kind of, I think brands have to be quite loose. Years ago, before I got into any of this, I was in advertising and working for Adidas, and we loved watching we loved as an agency. We loved watching what Nike did, because they were so cool creatively. And they would play around with colours, with logos, and they were confident enough to change stuff up and not be racked into just one kind of corporate identity guideline thing. So, yeah, red, we like it. It's part of our thing, but it's not the only thing, and it might move on. Watch this space.
Lauren Gardner said, where's your hat from and what other brands do you admire?
Lauren has said, where's the hat from? I'm wearing the hat because I can show you the lockdown haircut. Obviously, everybody's having problems with their haircut over lockdown, but I don't have that problem. But I'm wearing the hat. It's Borsellino, an Italian brand. I bought it on Matches. I got very bored one day and thought, what can I buy? I'll buy a hat. And I really like it. I'll probably get bored of it soon and not wear it ever again, and it'll go in a cupboard. But for now, the hat is on. It's Borsellino, and I bought it from Matches.
What other brands do you admire?
So what other brands do you admire? Oh, wow, that's a good one. Wow. God, this is difficult when it gets thrown at you like that. I love brands generally. I love the whole psychology around brands. I'm absolutely fascinated with how brands work and everything. I love brands like...
Old Town?
Yeah. So Liza just told me Old Town, which is a really amazing handmade kind of workwear brand that's in Norfolk, and it's two people who are the most gorgeous people, and they make handmade stuff. Look it up, Old Town. But on the other end of the scale, I love Apple. Everything I use from Apple, I find, is better than any other product. It's better phone. It's better, the fact that they invented this stuff and thought about this stuff and changed the world and the way we use technology, I think is incredible. I did a talk once about brands and what they stand for, and like the most incredible. Somebody said, "What's your favourite brand of all time?" And I said, I think probably the most incredible from a branding point of view, not from a product point of view because I've never had one, but from a brand point of view, Rolls-Royce, because it's the only brand in the world that is purely known. It's like the watchword for quality. So you talk about the Rolls-Royce of watches. This is the Rolls-Royce of computers. And to build a brand that gets to that point before technology, before advertising really, to get a brand that is known so heavily just for quality is incredible. And, to this day, people say to me, slightly weirdly, if I'm on a plane and I look out the window and it says Rolls-Royce on the engine under the wing, I feel a bit more confident about flying. You think, wow, that's an amazing brand thing. I guess the other end of the scale from that is what I said earlier about Derby County. So football clubs are the most amazing brands that I've ever seen in the world, because they're the only brands that I've ever seen that can produce an appalling, dreadful product that's expensive, doesn't work, and you just cannot give them up. You just go back year after year after year. And for me, it's been nearly 50 years. 49 years ago, my dad took me to my first game, and I've been treated like absolute rubbish ever since, but I love it. So football brands are interesting. Right, next one. Which one?
Any of that.
Yeah, here's a good one. Maud O'Keefe. Maud O'Keefe is a fantastic, talented shoe designer, and I love her very much. She's a really lovely person. She's asked, where do you get your Chore jackets? So for most of you won't know me that well, I wear a lot of these kind of workwear, French kind of workwear jacket, and I get them anywhere. Because I'm so boring with what I wear, and I wear the same thing all the time, basically navy. I might throw a little bit of white in there occasionally, but mainly navy. And the Chore jacket is what I love. I've got everything from, at the top end of the scale, I've got a couple of APC ones, which I love, but a bit pricey. And then I've got some like factory-owned ones from, there's a brand called Vetra, Vetra, and they're really nice. They're an old French factory which originally made them and still makes them today, but they're always out of stock for some reason. But anyway, so it varies. It doesn't matter. I don't care where they're from. There's a new brand which is really lovely called Painter Jackets. Look them up. And there are some, great ones out there. There's Oliver Spencer, who's a great brand. There's all kinds of people do them now.
What is make your own music?
Asked, ever wanted to make your own music? So there's Pinkers has asked, do you ever want to make your own music? Well, as you might see here, I'm a bit of a music fan, love music. Do you ever want to make your own music? Well, I used to in the 1985 to about 1990. I had a band and we used to play around all the pubs and clubs in London. Our high point was playing the Camden Palace in front of a couple of thousand people. And it was called Stax Cadillacs, and it was a 8-piece band with a 3-piece horn section, all in black zoot suits, white shirts, ties, loud ties, big kipper ties, and dark glasses. Very kind of Blues Brothers. But great question. And by the way, you'll never see anything on that band ever again because it just went nowhere. What's that one? So the girl who loves to travel has said, could you do a shoe for Black History Month? Wow, that's a hard question, but I love the idea of that. I'm gonna check it out and work. I tell you what, the girl who loves travel, please send me some ideas and I'll have a look at them and I'll send me some thoughts about what you do. And I really love to look at that. Sounds interesting.
Do you have a favourite Grinson store?
Oh, hang on. I've got one here, which is, going back to something I said earlier. Penny asked earlier on, what is the best-selling Grenson shoe ever? Okay, so if anybody's got any ideas, it's either Stanley, Archie, Fred, or Nanette. And post any thoughts. Anybody got any ideas? Stanley, Archie, Fred, or Nanette. I'm going to tell you that's not going to work. I've just realised that won't work at all. So I'm going to tell you. So basically, in the last year or so, Nanette has been enormous for Granson, absolutely enormous. It just went like crazy, as a lot of you will know, and we love it, and we hope it goes on forever. But it's not necessarily the best-selling shoe. It's not even necessarily, it's up there. It's probably the best-selling shoe right now for Granson, but over time, the best-selling shoe has been, I haven't actually done the numbers, but yeah, exactly. Sorry, I haven't actually got the right answer, but no, I think the best-selling shoe probably is Archie. So when we first started, the first shoe we did, we looked in the archive and we said, what's the best-selling Granson shoe of all time? And it was this really beautiful old wingtip brogue. And we thought, we'll do that, and we'll bring that out, and we'll do a modern version of that, and we called it Stanley. The brand took off, and we did that. It was that whole workwear thing in the kind of late 2000s, and it was the tan brogue, and it just went mad. It went crazy, and people were like queuing up to get it. It just went crazy. It was all about Stanley in tan. That's what the phrase Stanley in tan is like etched onto my brain. And then it's just started to slow down, and other things picked up and what have you. And we did quite early on, I took Stanley and thought, I wonder what happens if you like blow it up and do Stanley on steroids. So if we take every element of the shoe and just beef it up. So we made a triple sole instead of a double sole. We took all the punching and made the punch holes much bigger. And we made the whole shoe just a bigger heel, bigger chunky heel and what have you. And we did that. And that was like, straight away was quite popular, but was always beaten by Stanley. But then over time, Archie has overtaken Stanley. Stanley's died away. He's more, and Archie's become kind of the quintessential men's shoe, I think. And Stanley, because he's probably less recognisable, because he's similar to a lot of shoes out there with other people, Archie is more kind of Granson, and he's become huge. And now Archie and his brother Fred, who is a boot, the boot version, those two are the biggest selling men's shoes. But Nanette is massive.
Quite a nice question.
Next
Amy
one.
Wilson.
Amy Wilson. So what would be your dream collaboration? Oh, wow, that's a good one. God, these are so... Can I just have another quick Negroni?
You have to think, come back to it.
No, I'm going to do it. So dream collaboration would be... I used to think things like I love Supreme, love to do something with them, bit mad. I love Palace and people like that. But to be honest, what I'd really love to do, when we do collaborations with designers like Craig Green, for example, what's really amazing for me is that I see a designer, a totally different designer, bringing their ideas and their aesthetic to what we do. And Craig comes in, for example, and the first thing we have to establish is the limitations of what we can do. So we can only make a shoe a certain type of way, we can only do, and it's fascinating watching how he uses the limitations, uses the various bits and pieces that he can do and can't do to make something that works for him and is right for him. So I think the ultimate for that would be to work with somebody like Apple, or it sounds a bit weird, Apple doing, but to sit down with Apple and say, if Apple did a shoe, what would it be? I think that would be really, really exciting, because it would just bring so much to the table. And I think they would have thoughts and ideas that would be way beyond anything I've ever thought of, because when you do it every day and you work for one business every day, you kind of get into a bit of a furrow and you do things, over and over the same way. It takes somebody else to come in with ideas, to come in and say, have you thought about doing this a completely different way? And I'd absolutely love that. So, great question.
This is a good question. Are all your shoes made in the UK? From Paul Bennett.
Paul Bennett.
All your shoes made in the UK.
What's that? And I think people will be getting bored of us now, don't you? Shall we? What is your favourite restaurant in London? Oh my God! What is your favourite restaurant in London? That's good because it's not shoes. Favourite restaurant in London, the Clove Club. It's in Shoreditch. It's absolutely amazing. It's the ultimate of modern cooking in just like luxury, gorgeous, beautiful, but really cool. The Clove Club. And the guys, we actually do the shoes for the Clove Club. That's not a plug. I promise you that's not a plug. We do the shoes for them because we know them, but they're amazing. And just go there if you get the chance. Not cheap, but nothing amazing is cheap, unfortunately. And they'll be desperate, when they reopen for people to come in. I love the Clove Club. I love Lyle's. I love all kinds of things.
Have you got a shoe care routine?
Have I got a shoe care routine? That's... you don't want to know my shoe care routine because what you want to know is what shoe routine, care routine, I'll try and say it, it's the Negroni, would I recommend? Personally, I don't have a shoe care routine because they always say that shoemakers have the dirtiest, filthiest shoes because they don't care about them so much because they make them and they don't, they can just make another pair. What I would say is if you've got a good pair of shoes, first of all, always buy shoes that are well made out of good leather. It's all about the leather. The leather, a good pair of shoes is all about the quality of the leather. And that leather needs to be looked after. It's very natural. Never forget it's a natural product. So what you have to do is you have to keep it fed if you can. You polish the polish. If you get a good quality polish, a cheap polish just puts a kind of shiny covering on the top, which is fine. It protects it, makes them look smart. But if you get like a leather cream or a more expensive polish, it will soak into the leather and keep the leather really supple, and that's really important for the shoes to last a long time. The other thing is, quickly, I don't want to bore everybody to death about shoe care, but the other thing is everybody worries about what happens when they get wet. Don't worry. If you buy a decent pair of shoes, don't worry about the rain and the elements and everything. Wear them. They're there to be worn. And they're leather. For God's sake, they're on an animal out in the rain and the wind and they know how to cope with it. So use them, wear them. When they get wet, take them off, let them dry naturally. Don't ever put them by a radiator or by the boiler to try and dry them quickly, because what happens is they get full of water, and when they dry out, all the different patches and elements of the piece of leather in the shoe dry out at different speeds and if you put them by a radiator, they dry out very quickly, and then they all kind of curl up and it all so put shoe trees in, let them dry naturally at kind of room temperature somewhere, and they'll be great, and then feed them with some decent polish or cream. How can you tell if a shoe is what?
If your shoe leather is good or not.
Okay. Nick Sullivan. Hi, Nick. Nick is, I've forgotten the actual title, but creative director of Esquire magazine in New York. And he knows more about menswear than anybody else I've ever met. And he's asked me, how can you tell if the leather is good on the shoe? That's a really good question, and it's quite difficult for people generally. But what we use, the best leather is called full grain, and what that means is that there's no covering on the surface of the leather. So they take the leather, and the colour and the tanning solution is tanned into the leather, but the surface is still intact. So you can still see the grain, you can still see the actual holes where the hair of the animal came out of the hole on the surface of the leather if you look very closely. And it basically has a decent pair of shoes will have this kind of slightly translucent feel where you're looking through the surface into the colour. Whereas a very cheap pair of shoes, they will have a much bigger animal. So they'll use like a big buffalo or a big old cow, whatever, which will be full of blemishes and full of stretch marks and be a horrible old piece of leather. But then they tan over the top of the surface a high shine or a covering on it that hides everything below. So you can look at it and it almost looks plasticky. Whereas a full grain leather, you can see very closely, look close up, and you can see the pores of the leather of the animal. That's a really high quality leather because to use it, because you can see everything on the surface, to use it, we have to only use the bits that don't have any blemishes. And the skins that we get in will have stretch marks, and they'll have a mosquito might have bitten the animal, whatever, and you'll see all of that in the leather. So we have to cut those out. So it's very expensive, but it's very beautiful. And what happens is, because it doesn't have this covering on the top, if you like, it means that it's much softer, and as you wear the shoes, the creases in the leather are much softer, much more. Whereas a cheap pair of shoes with the covering on the top, it'll be cracked and it will be uncomfortable, and over time they won't wear. Whereas the thing I always say about a good pair of shoes, it's like a good pair of jeans. As you wear them, they get better and better and better, and there are very few products in the world that's the case. And the more you wear them, the better they get, because it's a beautiful piece of leather and it's natural, and you just help it along and it will do its thing. So we should wrap up fairly soon, I think. What are we doing? I think...
DM the questions.
Let's wrap it up now. I'm sure we're all bored. You're all bored of listening to me rabbiting on. So I'd just like to say a massive thank you for everybody who's tuned in. I know it's a difficult time for all of us, but do stay safe, and we'll all be out of it very soon, I'm sure. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Thank you to everybody who supports Grents and follows Grent, whether you're just following on Instagram, whether you're buying the shoes. We're so grateful. We really love our followers, and we get great feedback and everything. So thank you very much. Let me just hang on. Good reminder there. Just support the NHS. Support the NHS, because my daughter's a midwife. She's had the virus. She's absolutely fine, and she's back to work and really good. And we're trying to support in any way we can. It's not easy as a shoemaker, but we're making some. They've asked us for bags, for wash bags for the scrubs to be put into. So we're doing that. If you know anybody in the NHS at all that you think you would love us to give a shout out to, just go follow us on the Grenson account, and it's #GrensonHeroes. Post a picture, tell us the story of them, and get it out there. And we feature as many people as we can. One a day gets featured, and we send them a pair of shoes. But it's not about the shoes so much, it's about featuring them and highlighting the fact that these people are heroes, and they're doing something that somebody like me sitting at home on my bum every day is not doing. So shout out to them, amazing people.
And keep watching for more interviews.
And if, by the way, any more questions that we haven't answered that you want answering, send them, direct message them to the Grenson Shoes account, and we'll get back to you. I promise we'll get back to you. And we may, we'll have a look if there's plenty, and if anybody thinks it's worth doing again, we'll do it again. Really happy to do that. And we'll also do some interviews. I think I'd love to interview Nick Sullivan, who was on earlier. Haven't asked him yet, so he might be a bit perturbed by that. But no, I'd love to interview him, because he's a really interesting guy and he really knows his stuff. But we may do a bit of that. So keep tuning in, and just thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you soon. We'll see you on the other side. We'll see you on the other side. Thank you very much.